So today we'll continue the series of talks. We have 3 parts of the Maṅgala Sutta with the theme of well-being and happiness in life. I think just in case those who are not here, last week we actually began the Maṅgala Sutta by looking at 2 verses which comprise of 6 blessings. We talk about association with the wise, to avoid those who are foolish, and to honor those who are worthy of honor. So with that, we covered 3 of the blessings. And then we also talk about on the right path, to live in a suitable location, and having done merits in the past. So that constitute verse 2, and this will be blessings 4, 5, and 6. So we have covered 6 blessings and 2 verses. Now, as I mentioned last week, the 38 blessings actually come in 10 verses, but actually they are, if you look at the actual, they are actually 12 because it also includes the introduction and the conclusion. So altogether 12 verses, but 10 of it specifically on what are the factors that help us to develop or cultivate blessings in our everyday life. Okay, so this is a very important discourse. In fact, this discourse will help to clear whatever misconception people have that Buddhism is only meant for those who have decided to become monks or nuns. Okay, of course, if you read the text selectively, then that may be the impression that you get. But then if you actually study, for example, the many Pali texts in the Pali canon, you find that the Buddha actually gave many teachings to lay people, including to kings and princes, to ordinary people, to businessmen, and to householders. So there are actually many of them. So the Maṅgala Sutta is obviously one of those. But again, like all the Buddha's teachings, is always a graduated path. The Buddha talks about how we should commence with worldly happiness, and then eventually experiencing what is called inner happiness or ultimate happiness, right? The happiness of Nibbanic bliss. So the Maṅgala Sutta is a very good example of such a discourse. So for today, what I'll do is I'll speak maybe for the next 40 minutes, 45 the most, and then leave you some time for Q&A, because I understand we will end at 10:30. All right, so I will be brief. It's obviously not possible to cover in detail each of the verses, but I hope that you will be able at the end of the sessions make reference to the many sources that I have also highlighted in this series of slides, which you will see in a short while. Okay, I think that will be more useful than just listening to what I've got to say. So again, just on the background, as you know, and in fact, as I mentioned last week, this is one of those discourses like the Satipatthana Sutta. It is found in not just one section of the Pali Canon, but also found in two other sections. Like the Maṅgala Sutta is found in the Sutta Nipata, where it is actually called the Maha Maṅgala Sutta, as well as the Khuddaka Pata, right? Both of which in the Khuddaka Nikaya. All right, so we'll go on. So I've last session covered what is basically called essential blessings. So I've covered 6 of the blessings in 2 verses. So for today, I'm going to look at the supporting blessings, which will be blessing from blessing number 7 to blessing 21. So there are actually many there, but as I mentioned early on, I will just discuss briefly and then give you the sources where you could actually subsequently look into greater detail. So today we'll look at supporting blessings and personal blessings. And then next week, we'll conclude with the higher blessings and the supreme blessing. Okay, now the supporting blessings, basically there are 4 of them. It talks about being learned, being skillful, being disciplined, and developing wise speech. So let's see what is mentioned by each one of these 4 blessings here. Before that, maybe we look at how it is worded in its Pali itself. Yeah, I think it's good if we can just remember some of these key Pali words here. As you can see, the first word is Bahu Sachana Sipancha Binayocha Susikito Subhasita Chaya Vacha Etang Mangala Uttama. So the first one is learned. So the word bahu means vast or ample, and sachang, the word there you see, means learning. And then sipang means a craft or an art. Okay, and then the word vinayo, I'm sure you know from the word vinaya, it means discipline. Susikito, it means that one should be well trained or well trained. Okay, subhasita, the other word here, it means well spoken, it's pleasant, and vacha. And the word vacha means speech. Okay, so here basically it talks about vast learning, perfect in an art or in handicraft, or highly disciplined, well-spoken speech. So these are the highest blessings. So let's see what each one of them means. Now we talk about being learned and skilled. So here, this is where the Buddha talks about we must be able to support ourselves and our family. And in order to do so, we have to be able to earn a decent living. In fact, I did not mention here, but in many of the discourses, other discourses which the Buddha talks about, and I think early on you had Brother Gatikara who spoke to you on the Dikajanu Sutta, right? Some of you may have also attended that. And I think that is another very important discourse where the Buddha addressed a lay person by the name of Dikajanu. And he says that, well, it is okay, if you work very hard, you earn a good living, and you have your wealth, but it must all be earned through righteous means. One must support oneself through righteous means or through decent living. Okay, so we must have the necessary skills and qualifications so that we can apply them in our work. So being able to earn a proper living and not having to struggle to survive or resort to dishonesty or crime. So this is essential for both material and spiritual advancement. Okay, for example, if you don't have any particular skill, you're not able to find a job. You cannot find a proper job, then you find that you will not be able to dedicate any of your time to even practicing the Dhamma. Right? So those are necessary. So to have a learned and be skillful. Now, discipline, of course, goes without saying. The whole of the Buddhist practice is about discipline and observing the 5 precepts, for example. That forms the very foundation of our discipline, isn't it? Because the precepts strengthens our resolve and our ability to avoid immoral and harmful actions. And you follow such a code of discipline, it keeps us from trouble and difficulties that such negative actions bring. So that's the second point Buddha talks about in terms of discipline. Now, the third one is about well-spoken speech. Now, there are many discourses here. I just mentioned the name of the discourse at the bottom of it, so I hope that you'll be able to go back and then read it up. Okay, the 5 precepts, I think you already know about discipline because this morning you recited them, right? A lot have been spoken about. But speech actually is a very important part of the Buddha's teachings. In fact, in the Vacha Sutta, the Buddha says, monks, a statement endowed with 5 factors is well spoken. What are these 5 factors? It is spoken at the right time. It is spoken in truth. It is spoken affectionately. It is spoken beneficially. It is spoken with a mind of goodwill. Okay, so we can have a full Dhamma talk just to talk about the Vacha Sutta, but I thought I'd just leave this with you for you to reflect on what are the 5 things. So it is said a well-spoken speech, a well-spoken speech has got 5 characteristics, and this is what is meant: spoken at the right time, spoken truthfully, spoken affectionately, spoken beneficially, and spoken with a mind of goodwill. Okay, please reflect on that. Now, there's another discourse. This is from the Maṅgala Sutta. Again, I hope you would, at the end of today's talk, make reference to it. In here, it says that right speech, as you would also understand from the Eightfold Paths, it is to abstain from lying, abstain from slander, abstain from harsh speech, and abstain from idle chatter. So there's a different perspective of what constitutes well-spoken speech or right speech. So abstain from lying, from slander, harsh speech, and idle chatter. So again, we could have a whole session to talk about what is right speech. Now, from another discourse called the Abhayaraja Kumara Sutta, the Buddha again emphasized how our speech should be. And there are 6 permutations here, as you can see. The only permutation which the Buddha would strongly encourage all of us to do is to ensure that our speech is always true, useful. Sometimes it can be unpleasant. And our speech, again, on the permutation number 6, it is always true, it is always useful, and it is pleasant. So out of these 6 permutations here, you find that whatever we say from the Buddhist perspective, our speech should always be true. It applies for all time. It should always be useful. In other words, whatever we say is beneficial for the other party. Beneficial for others is beneficial for oneself, right? And it has another characteristic, which is we try as far as possible for the speech to be pleasant. But sometimes a speech which is true, which is useful, can be unpleasant to the ears. Okay? But when it is unpleasant, it is always spoken with a good heart. All right? So the earlier reference in the Vacha Sutta, the well-spoken speech. All right? So even though a speech is true, it's useful, it may occasionally be unpleasant to hear, but it should always be spoken with a kind heart, and it is useful. All right. So again, if you read this discourse, examples are given for each of those 6 permutations. Right. So I make reference for you. So again, this is a discourse which the Buddha gave to a prince. His name is Abhaya Raja Kumara. So you see, the Buddha actually not only taught monks and nuns, he taught many members of the royalty. He spoke to many merchants. He spoke to even the people who are from in India at those days called the lower caste, all categories of society. Okay, so this is an example, Abhaya Raja Kumara Sutta. Then in the Vangisa Sutta, this is in the Theragatha, the Buddha says one should speak only that word by which one would not torment oneself nor harm others. So that word is indeed well spoken. So one should speak only pleasant words, words which are acceptable to others, and what one speaks without bringing evils to others is pleasant. Of course, as I mentioned, sometimes in the Buddha, in the context of the Abhaya Raja Kumara Sutta, he also said that sometimes a speech can be unpleasant, but as long as it is true, it is useful, and it's spoken with a kind heart. Okay, so speech is a very important aspect of the Buddha's teachings. In fact, even today, increasingly many meditation teachers, for example, are saying that meditation doesn't only involve keeping quiet, keeping silent when you're on your cushion. Meditation also involves when you are awake in your everyday life, when you talk to people. I think one of the very well-known teachers that some of you know is U Tejaniya. So Sayadaw U Tejaniya talks about the importance of a mindful speech. So how is it that we can actually practice mindful speech? Right? So speech becomes very important. And I'm always reminded of this wonderful advice from Lama Atisha. Some of you who are familiar with Lama Atisha, he has got this famous text called the Bodhisattva Garland of Jewels. Bodhisattva Garland of Jewels. Atisha said, when in the midst of others, check your speech. When alone, check your mind. So 2 things are very important, our mind and our speech. So that's from the Bodhisattva Garland of Jewels. So remember this. When in the midst of others, check your speech. When alone, check your mind. All right? Okay? So the speech and the mind, they're all interrelated, isn't it? Dhammapada says the mind is a forerunner of all things. Okay? So there are many, many discourses the Buddha talks about speech. And in the Maṅgala Sutta, the Buddha talks about the importance of well-spoken speech. Okay? So I thought I'd just make reference to show you that when you study the Buddhist teachings, if you're not selective in your choice of discourses to study, you find that actually there's a consistency of what the Buddha spoke in all the teachings. Okay? Now, let me move on because of time. So I'm going to move on to the next set of blessings. This is verse 4. This is called supporting blessings. Okay, so in supporting blessings, there are actually three aspects here. You've got filial piety, supporting spouse and children, and right livelihood. So 11, 12, and 13. So this is verse 4, and it says that Mata Pitu Upatanang Huta Darasa Sangaho Anakula Cha Kamanta Etang Maṅgala Utama. So 11, 12, and 13. So these are the three blessings. Support parents, cherish wife and children, and engage in wholesome jobs. Well, let's look at each one of it. Yeah? Support parents. Okay, so it is not only in Confucianism that we talk about filial piety. You know, in fact, when Buddhism first went to China, it had a lot of resistance from the Chinese, because the Chinese, when they heard that the Buddha encouraged celibacy, that encouraged his disciples to all becoming monks and nuns. So the first question is, if we follow Buddhism, how are we going to sustain our lineage? Okay, so the Chinese initially had that the Buddhism was not a teaching that had a lot of emphasis on filial piety. But eventually, of course, they realized that was not true. Okay, so our parents brought us into this world and cared for us from birth. So it is only the most heartless and uncaring individuals who will not help their parents. So our parents are very important to us, isn't it? So, like for example, in last week's session, I talked about the external blessings, 3 types of external blessings, and the third type of external blessings is the blessing from our own parents. Okay, so they are the one who always give us the blessing, no matter how difficult situation we are in. Okay, so the Buddha says that the only way we can ever repay our parents is to share and encourage them to practice. So I'm going to make reference to a few teachings where the Buddha talks about the supporting of parents. So of course, I think the famous one, many of you may have heard about, is called the Kata Anyu Sutta. Kata Anyu means gratitude, right? So this is found in the book of Gradual Sayings, book of 2, Sutta 31. The Buddha here says there are 2 people who are not easy to repay. Which 2? Your mother and father. And here the simile goes, even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on the other shoulder, for 100 years, you would not in that way able to repay your parents. Why is that? Because mother and father do much for their children. They care for them, they nourish them, they introduce them to the world. So I think when the Chinese heard about this, when Buddhism was introduced to China, they realized that, in the Buddha's teachings, the concept of filial piety is just as important. Yeah? And then some of you who are familiar with Tibetan Buddhism, you know the concept of bodhicitta. For example, the practice of bodhicitta. One of the practice is to treat our mothers, is to treat all sentient beings as our mother. So if you treat all sentient beings as your mother in your practice, that means you will have love and compassion for all sentient beings, just as you would have love and compassion for your mother. Okay, so that is the extent of how important in the Buddhist teachings our parents are. Okay, so you can find this in the Kata Anyu Sutta. Of course, I've just got a very short extract here, but in the Kata Anyu Sutta itself, you will be able to understand. You'll be able to read how the Buddha says the only way we can repay our parents is to actually show them the way of the Dhamma, right? So that they benefit not only in this very life itself, but in the next birth, so that we actually sow the seeds of Dhamma into their subconscious. It will stay with them. Okay, so our gratitude to parents. So here in the Maṅgala Sutta, the Buddha says it itself is a blessing. Now, in the Maṅgala Sutta, the Buddha not only talks about parents, the Buddha also talks about spouses, our spouse. Of course, in the text, it talks about the wife, right? So Indian society, right, is very much a paternal society, right? So we always talk using the masculine. So then we talk about supporting wife and children. Okay. So so this would include the crucial duty of teaching them the Dhamma for their own long-lasting peace and happiness. So taking proper care of a family means that we have a household with peace and harmony, another important factor necessary for spiritual development. So I think there was it was in another talk which I gave, I think at the BGF, where someone asked the question. He was saying that there was, sometimes when people go very deep into Dhamma, then they began to neglect their family. They began to say, I no longer want to have anything to do with my spouse or my children. I want to practice non-attachment. All right, and then the parent, and then the children and the spouse no longer have the support of the father, right? Because the father says, or it could be the mother, says that, now I'm deep into Dhamma practice. But then they forgot the importance of responsibility. So if you choose a lay life, if you choose to be a lay person, a householder with a family, then it is your responsibility to support them. Okay, of course you can continue to practice the Dhamma. So this is where the Buddha, so if one understand and read the Maṅgala Sutta, one reads the Dikkhajano Sutta, Adiya Sutta, and next one which I'm going to make reference to is the Parabhava Sutta. Right? Now, many of you have heard of the Maṅgala Sutta, is what we are discussing now. Maṅgala Sutta is talking about the conditions for blessings, the conditions which are auspicious for blessings. Now, there's another discourse, not so popular, is called the Parabhava Sutta. Now, Parabhava Sutta is actually a discourse about downfall. What is it that if we do, it will lead to our downfall, which is actually just the reverse of the Maṅgala Sutta. Now, in the Parabhava Sutta, which is all found in the Sutta Nipata, there are two verses here about families, about wife and children. Okay, he says not to be contented with one's own wife and to be seen with harlots, prostitutes, and the wives of others. This is a cause of one's downfall. So here the Buddha gave very practical advice to householders, to lay people. Obviously, the Buddha is not talking to monks, right? The Buddha can't be addressing to monks, isn't it? So the Buddha was addressing lay people. So again, you have another discourse called the Parabhava Sutta, where the Buddha was very explicit about what we should do if we choose to have a household life. Okay? And then there's another part of the Parabhava Sutta. The Buddha says, been past one's youth, to take a young wife and to be unable to sleep for jealousy of her. This is a cause of one's downfall. So that's a very interesting, very amusing statement the Buddha gave, right? So you'll be wondering, why is the Buddha, you would imagine the Buddha would only be talking about, about very complex, very abstruse, very difficult, and topics like dependent origination. Suddenly here Buddha talking about being past one's youth, to take a young wife and to be unable to sleep for jealousy of her. So this is the cause of one's downfall. All right. So this is, I find it very amusing, but it tells you about the social situations in India. So I think this is not something that happens only today, but it happens even during the Buddha's time. Okay, so the Buddha gave this advice. So again, I think there's a list of many things. I can't remember offhand how many. I think there are more than 10 factors that causes one's downfall. So you can read the Parabhava Sutta, and here the Buddha talks about family, about one's wife. So here it's important that if one chose to have a family, one has got the responsibility to take good care of one's family. Okay. There's another discourse called the Sigalovada Sutta, which I'm sure many of you are familiar. You must have heard many teachings on the Sigalovada Sutta. Now, this discourse was preached to a lay person called by the name of Sigala, right? So Sigalovada. So here again, the Sigalovada Sutta itself we could take another 3 sessions to complete this discourse, right? Or 4 sessions. So here I just give you one slide. Puttadara, Bisa Pacha. Puttadara. What does Puttadara mean? Putta means children. Dara means wife. Puttadara. Okay. You know the word Putta from the Pali word is Putta. So you're all familiar with the word Putra, right? Bhumi Putra, isn't it? So the word Putra actually is Sanskrit for the Pali Putta. So Bhumi Putra means children of the soil, right? Children of the soil. So Putta, sort of the Pali word Putta. So here in the Sigala Buddha Sutta, Buddha says that how should one, what is one's commitment to one's spouse? Of course, here again, you know, the sutta is worded from the husband to the wife. So it says that one has a commitment to honor her, to respect her, fidelity, right? In other words, be faithful to her, take good care of her, share authority with her, right? Don't be a dictator, right? Give her authority, and then provide her gifts. All right, provide her gifts means, of course, you give within your means, right? Doesn't mean you have to buy really expensive handbags that you can only get in California, not those type of gifts. Okay, so you honor her, you respect her, you have fidelity, you share authority, and you provide gifts. And in return, Buddha also explained how the wife should reciprocate. Okay, the wife should organize her duties well, should be kind to, you know, to the servants. You know, maybe today many of us have we employ you know, domestic helpers, either Filipino maids or Indonesian or Cambodian or whatever. We should also be kind to them, right? That's the role, you know. So we should never treat them like a second class, because imagine if not for them, you know. So fidelity, and they of course have to also play their part by being filial to the husband. Wise budgeting, they don't overspend. They don't overspend. And I think if you had attended Brother Katikara's talk on the Dikajanu Sutta, I think there was also a reference on how we should live within our means, isn't it? All right. If you earn 5,000 ringgit a month, don't spend like you earn 50,000 ringgit. Right? You live within your means. And doesn't mean that you should also be a stingy, right? Be a penny pincher, isn't it? That's the word that's used in the Dikajanu Sutta. And not only that, many other discourses, Diya Sutta. So wise budgeting, you know, they know how to budget and provide gifts. They are also very skillful. So here, you see, it's very interesting that the Buddha actually went at length to actually explain about the importance of the relationship between husband and wife. Right? So the Buddha was actually a universal teacher who not only taught monks and nuns but also lay people. Okay. Right, livelihood. The next one. So again, many things can be said here. In the Noble Eightfold Path, you find that interestingly enough, out of the eight parts of it, one of it is right livelihood. So we should avoid occupations that involve killing, the sale of animals' flesh, the trading of humans, weapons, poisons, and toxicants. Occupations which are unethical, immoral, and illegal should also be avoided. So engaging in any work which causes harm to others will never allow anyone the true peace of mind essential for spiritual development. Therefore, it is a great blessing we can earn a living by means which are free from unwholesome activities. Or as in the suttas, it says, you earn through your hard work, through righteous means. Right? Very important. Whatever money, the Buddha never said that we cannot become rich. The Buddha never said that we cannot become wealthy. The Buddha never said that you cannot aspire to be millionaires or billionaires. It never said that. All it says is you must make sure that the way you earn your living, the way you aspire to be a millionaire is through a virtuous or through a righteous means. I think the key word is righteous. All right? So right livelihood, there are many other discourses. I will not have time to go through. I just want to leave you with the name of the discourses so that you could go back and then read it up. Okay? So the other one is Magga Vibhanga Sutta, and the other one is called the Vanija Sutta. Right? So these are the various discourses. Dikajanu Sutta, the one that Brother Gatikara spoke about, right? So a householder, knowing his income and expenses, leads a balanced life, neither extravagant nor miserly, knowing that his income will stand in excess of his expenses. So you must always have some surplus, okay, right? But not his expenses in excess of his income, okay? Right. In fact, I think one of the blessings as you grow older is to know that you are no longer in debt, isn't it? All right? I think that's also one of the great blessings. So in other words, you must live in, I think there's another discourse, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the Adiya Sutta, where the Buddha says how many portions of your wealth should be spent, on business, how many portions of your income should be spent, for like as a donation, how much of it should be spent to keep for a rainy day, as a savings, as a form of saving. So it's interesting. The Buddha even talks about the importance of savings, to the lay people 2,600 years ago, right? Okay. And the Mahachatari Saka Sutta, the Majjhima Nikaya 117. So there are many, many discourses. Now we got another 10, 15 minutes. So I'm going to finish the personal blessings. This will be number 14 to 18. So you got 5 types of blessings. So generosity, right conduct, care for relatives, social service, and act blamelessly. Okay, let's look at that. So this is verse 5. So I've got 2 more verses, 5 and 6. So Danancha Dhammacharyacha Nata Kanancha Sangaho Anavajani Kamani Etang Maṅgala Sutta. So basically it talks about being generous, practice right conduct, cherish one's relatives, conduct social service, and act blamelessly. Okay, let's quickly run through them. So manner of giving. So the first one is be generous. Dana. I think all of you know about this word, dana. Okay. I think last week somebody asked what's the difference between dana and chaga. So that's the other word, chaga. So dana is just giving, right? But in actual fact, when we follow through all that the Buddha talks about when it comes to giving, in terms of the motivation that goes in our mind when it comes to giving, then the giving which is out of kindness, giving which is not out of anger, giving which is not out of fear, that giving becomes what in Pali is called chaga, C-A-G-A, right? So you give out of faith, you give respectively. So, sorry, not respectively, give respectfully, right? There's a typo error there. You give respectfully, not respectively, right? Sorry about that. Give at the right time, give with kindness, and give to benefit oneself and others. So this is found in the Sappurisa Dana Sutta. I think Bhante Agachita also gave a talk on this particular sutta. So I think you can easily Google that. I think Bhante Agachita have also explained what it means to give out of faith, out of saddha, out of conviction, to give out of respect, to give at the right time. So there's also a right time to give. I think last week also there was a question about, when is the right time to give, right? So I think we have to use our wisdom. Wisdom is very important. Remember, as I said, compassion is, of course, crucial. We should live our life on compassion. But wisdom is also important. It is said, in fact, I think who was it? It was Joseph Goldstein, one of the popular American Vipassana teacher, who said, if you sum up the Buddha's teachings, you can sum it up into 3 words, okay? Where he said the expression of the Buddhist way of life is compassion. The essence of the Buddhist way of life is wisdom. And the method to cultivate wisdom and compassion is actually mindfulness. All right? So compassion as an expression of our way of life, wisdom as the essence of our path, and mindfulness as the method for us to achieve compassion and wisdom. I think Joseph Goldstein gives that at length if you read his book called One Dharma, right? One Dharma. Okay, so again, I would not have time to go into details. Sappurisa Dana Sutta. Each of the discourses I mentioned, we can spend one whole session to talk about the discourse because there are many aspects of it. So I just take reference to the manner of giving. Right conduct. Now, right conduct, this morning we recite the 5 precepts, so I will not repeat the 5 precepts, but there's another aspects of the precepts which I personally strongly believe and strongly believe all of us should practice. It is what is called the ennoblers, right? In some Buddhist centers, we chant not just the 5 precepts, we also chant what is called the 5 ennoblers. So what are the 5 ennoblers? If you look at these 5 things I mentioned on the slide, they are actually the positive aspects of the precepts. So here, with deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body. With open-handed generosity, I purify my body. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I purify my body. With truthful communication, I purify my speech. And with mindfulness, clear and radiant, I purify my mind. So if you look at the 5 precepts, the first precept is about killing, which is telling you what not to do, right? But maybe it did not explicitly say what you should do. But it's quite clear if you understand the Buddhist teachings, it is not just telling you what not to do, but also telling you what to do. So instead of causing harm or killing, maybe killing is too big a thing that we do not do, but causing harm. So instead of not causing harm, we actually cultivate compassion and loving kindness. So the second one is generosity. So instead of taking things, we give, which is the positive aspect of the second precept. So instead of committing sexual misconduct, we practice contentment, simplicity, right? Instead of lying, which is breaking the third precept, we speak the truth, truthful communication. And instead of breaking the 5th precept, we purify the mind. We develop mindfulness, clear and radiant. Okay, so these are called the 5 ennoblers. Those of you who are interested to read more about what is called the 5 ennoblers, there's actually a little book called The 5 Precepts and the 5 Ennoblers. Yeah, I believe you have it in the Bob's library. Of course, I know you can't go to Bob's now, but later when the COVID is over, you should get hold of this book called The 5 Precepts and the 5 Ennoblers. I think it's written by the late Sangharaja of Thailand, Prince Vajiranyana Varasa. Okay, so you can make reference to that. Now, care for relatives. Again, it's very interesting. The Buddha talks about the importance of caring for relatives. So beyond providing for our immediate family, remember the earlier blessings was towards our parents and also towards our wife and children, or our spouse and children. Here, Buddha is talking, we should also provide for our immediate relatives and friends if they are in need. Okay? As we provide assistance to one another when a need arises, we create goodwill among the people around us. And this further supports our spiritual program. So the Buddha was actually looking at the whole community, the whole society. And actually, if you analyze the 5 precepts, the Buddha gave the 5 precepts for the basic reason, for the very reason because we live in society. If we don't live in society, if there's nobody else other than we ourselves alone, you don't need the 5 precepts. You don't need the precept because there's nobody for you to kill. There's nobody for you to harm. But because we live in society, so we need the precepts. So the Buddha gave his teachings because of very specific needs, why we need them. So similarly, the Buddha talks about caring for relatives. Again, I make reference to the Parabhava Sutta. So please refer to the Parabhava Sutta. Here, the Buddha says to have much wealth and ample gold and food, but to enjoy one's luxuries alone, this is a cause of one's downfall. So you have money, you have gold, you have gold, you have money, you have food. You must share it with others. And who do you start with? Of course, you benefit your family, then your relatives, then the neighborhood, right? So the Buddha also believes charity starts at home. Eventually, we benefit everyone. So, but if you have all this wealth, but you only enjoy this alone, so Buddha said this also cause of one's, because miserliness is not recommended. Then to be proud of birth, of wealth, of clan, and despise one's own relatives. Sometimes sometimes we hear, oh, so and so has become very successful. Maybe you have a particular relative, suddenly they become very successful, or maybe, because of, I don't know, because of the COVID, they venture into some business, and then, what are business? I don't know, pharmaceutical or make gloves. Suddenly they become very wealthy, right? Then they despise their other relatives who are poor. So the Buddha says this is also a cause of one's downfall. So never look down on your relatives who may be poor, but now you are rich. So even you're wealthy now, they are still your relatives. And they are relatives because of the karmic link. So and so is your relative because of past karmic link. You're all relatives today. Right? So that's very important. Master Singing in his book called Creating or Living with Affinity. That's again a wonderful book if you can get hold of it. It's called Living with Affinity by Master Singing. It's in English. Right? It's in English. Living with Affinity. He talks about the importance of creating affinity with all sentient beings, including even our relatives, because our relatives are our relatives because of our past karmic link. So always remember that. Okay? So we must not despise our relatives, even when we become successful and we are wealthy. And then social service, all right? Bhikkhu Bodhi actually compiled, in fact, a very extensive list of all the Buddha's teachings on what the Buddha talks about, how we can develop a society that is filled with happiness. Right? Okay. So it's called social harmony in Buddhism. Okay, so social service also very important. Now, the other one is Buddha talks about act blamelessly. Act blamelessly. Again, there are many things we can talk about it, all right? How to be blameless. We can have one whole Dhamma class on that, but I thought I'd just make reference to two discourses, which I hope you could further understand. In the Cherish Sutta, the Buddha says there are two bright qualities guard the world, and which two? Moral shame and moral fear. Now, again, those of you who practice meditation, you have heard of this word hiri otapa. To be afraid of doing something, all right, which is unwholesome, all right. So you are ashamed of doing something that is unwholesome, right? And moral fear, and also the fear that these unwholesome actions of ours will lead us to woeful states, all right. So there's a lot we can talk about, but just two words I hope you can remember: moral shame and moral fear. If we remember these two words, we will live our life blamelessly. So that's in the Cherish Sutta, right, in Anguttara Nikaya. Also in the Visuddhimagga, those of you who are also into commentaries, right? I know some people in Babs are orthodox. They only read sutras, they don't read commentaries, right? But if you read the commentaries, there's in the Visuddhimagga, it says our self-respect, one like the daughter of a good family rejects evil doing through moral shame. So our respect for others, one like a courtesan rejects evil doing through moral fear. So even in the Visuddhimagga, this concept of hiri otapa is also mentioned. Okay, so I have to go on because of time. So last three: avoid evil, avoid intoxicants, and steadfast in virtues. Now, avoid evil. Okay, I think avoid evil, abstain from intoxicants, and be heedful in the Dhamma. So it's the last three of the verse 6. Okay, so let's look at avoid evil. Now, many of you have heard of this famous saying, to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind. This is the teaching of all Buddhas, isn't it? If this is found in the Dhammapada. Now, when there's this story or this legend that when Bodhidharma, have you heard, who is Bodhidharma? The great Zen master, the Indian master who brought Zen or Chan to China, Bodhidharma. So they say that when Bodhidharma met the Chinese emperor asked Bodhidharma, he said, "Oh, you're a great Dharma master, you're a great Buddhist master. Can you tell me what is the Buddha's teachings?" And Bodhidharma told the emperor, "Oh, the Buddha's teachings to avoid all evil, to cultivate good, and to purify the mind." So when the emperor heard this, the emperor said, "What? Even a 6-year-old child can understand that. Why are you telling me this? I thought you are a great master. You'll be able to tell me some, more deeper aspects of the Dhamma." a 6-year-old child understands avoid evil, do good, purify. The Bodhidharma reply to the emperor was, "Good emperor, you're absolutely right. That even a 6-year-old child can understand it. But even a 60-year-old man cannot practice it." So you can think we understand it, but are we able to practice? So the Buddha's teaching is always about putting it into practice, to avoid evil, to cultivate good, and to cleanse one's mind. Okay? So I think what we could say is that you find in all religions, the first two, to avoid evil, cultivate good, but it's only in Buddhism that it teaches you how to cleanse one's mind. That is why you have a whole range of discourses, like the Anapanasati Sutta, the Satipatthana Sutta, the Vitakka Santana Sutta. So a whole range of the discourses Buddha gave that actually tells us how to not just avoid evil, not just to cultivate good, but how do we purify mind? Okay? So this is the teaching of the Buddha. So this is the Dhammapada. So in the Maṅgala Sutta, it talks about the importance of practicing this. So alcoholism. So again, in the 5th precept, this is mentioned. So in the Sigalovada Sutta, again, is also mentioned. And in the Sigalovada Sutta, it goes into greater depth that when one is alcoholic, then it leads to many things: loss of wealth, increase in quarrels, likelihood of illness, source of disgrace, indecent exposure of oneself, weakens one's intelligence. Right? In my working life, I've seen how the effects of alcohol has actually caused the downfall of so many people, including 2 general managers in our organization, because of alcohol. Right? He was so happy on the night of the ceremony. He was the general manager. And the next day, the chairman said, "Sorry, you're no more the general manager." Or what you did the previous night. Okay. And there was another managing director, because he was the managing director of a fairly successful company. And because of what he did on the night of my chairman's birthday party, he just couldn't control himself. All right. He just couldn't control himself. And the next day, well, he was a little bit less unfortunate. He was sent to East Germany, actually, to head our business, little business in Germany. That was in East Germany. Can you imagine that? Okay. So I've seen, as I said, so if Babs invite me to give a talk on this, I'll be able to share more details. Right? But of course, without mentioning names. So in the Sigalovada Sutta, right, it's so clear the Buddha talks about the importance of not being. Okay, the last one is on heedfulness. Heedfulness is the path to the deathless, and heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful do not die. The heedless as if already dead. Right? So this is the Dhammapada. There's another verse in the Dhammapada: through initiative, heedfulness, restraint, and self-control, the wise would make an island, no flood can submerge. And I don't have that, but I think if you remember in the last discourse of the Buddha, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, what did the Buddha say before he passed away? What was his famous saying? As we say, famous last words. All right? All conditioned things are subject to change. All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence, isn't it? Okay? So that concludes my session on this. I know I've not gone into details, but because of time. But I hope, as I said, what is important, I think, or what is more important, will be the sources that I've left behind. Please have access to my slides, because I think that will be more meaningful than listening to what I say. So next week we will cover the last 4 verses about developing a spiritual life as well as cultivating inner virtue. Thank you very much, and I think we have about 20 minutes. Yep. So if there are questions, I'll be quite happy to respond to the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Benny, for this wonderful Dhamma sharing. I think the Buddha's teachings is always practical and sometimes tinged with a sense of humor. And yet it's always given to the right context, be it monastics or lay people. and the right place, right location, right time. We have learned quite a lot from you this morning. There is a question: if we tell a white lie to avoid lending money to a relative or friend who is a habitual borrower, is our lie breaking our fourth precept? Is it definitely not right speech? Is it?
Well, the question of white lies, yeah.
Yeah.
I think as long as it is not true, it is a lie. Okay. But then one sees what is the motivation behind it. Okay. The example is given one. So this is an occasion where one uses one's wisdom. If one knows that this relative of ours, he's always asking us for money, and we know for sure that the money that this person takes, he uses it to go and buy alcohol, or maybe he even used to buy drugs. We know that for sure. Now we can say, "Oh, I'm a Buddhist. I must keep my 5 precepts. I will not tell a lie." If he asks me, "Do you have money?" Of course, I have money, so I will give him money. Then that is not a very skillful action. So in such a situation, one knows that one is breaking that particular precept. But one also knows, one is also mindful that yes, that is not saying the truth, but one is prepared to bear the consequences of that action, because one has got a higher motivation that I will not give him this money because I know this money is not going to be for his benefit. Instead, I will help him in other ways. I will give him the money. I may even ask him, okay, what do you need the money for? If you need the money to buy food, or buy for you. One becomes very blunt with that person, very direct. But if you're going to use it to buy alcohol, to buy drugs, I'm not going to give it to you. You need food, tell me, I'll give you food. So one can be very direct, So, but there'll be occasions, like, again, you can think it is hypothetical. The classic example, like, the classic example, like if you are, say, you're walking back home, and then suddenly you heard some noise, you heard some people shouting, and then you find a young man or a young girl running towards you, and then you could hear that there were a group of people behind chasing after this person, and then this young boy or young girl comes to you and say, please hide me, or he hides himself behind a particular pillar or something. And then when this group of people come with knives and then saw you and said, do you see this boy running in front, running towards you? So what do? You can say, oh yes, I must not tell a lie. Yes, he's hiding there. And you know for sure that this group of guys is going to hammer him, going to even kill him. But what would you do? Right? So in that kind of, you can say, hypothetical situation, you can say, I will not tell a lie. If he dies, so
The question.
say, yes, I'm prepared to bear the consequences of telling a lie, but because I want to save a life. So what goes in your motivation? Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So always remember, as long as we are in samsara, we are in samsara. Samsara is never perfect, right? And we try our level best not to cause pain and suffering to all sentient beings. So how do we do that? All right. Sometimes in the process of doing that, we ourselves bear the consequences. We bear the consequences. Okay.
Thanks.
But if you are a puritanical, if you're a Puritan, you say, no, I will not break line. Sorry, then it's up to you. Okay, it's up to you.
Yep.
Okay.
Another question is, the heedful do not die. Can you explain "do not die" in that context?
Okay.
This
Here is a
Facebook.
play on the word death. All right.
Death.
The heedful, one who is mindful. All right, one is mindful at the point of death. There's no more cravings in that sense, right? So there's no more birth and death, because when we say death, what is death from the Buddhist perspective? Death, when death takes place, it leads to life. In fact, there's a saying that death is a backward view of birth, and birth is a forward view of death. So when death takes place, death leads on to birth. So one goes, if you're familiar with the dependent origination. So when one is heedful, when one practices mindfulness, when one is mindful, one does not cling on to one's life anymore. So there's no more birth and death. That is why it is said that the nirvana is beyond birth and death. Okay. A good discourse to understand this concept is a discourse called the Kukura Vatika Sutta. Kukura Vatika Sutta. So that the discourse talks to you about, for example, if you do good, it leads to good results. You do bad, it leads to bad results, right? So it is only when one is able to perform neither good nor bad results, neither good nor bad actions, then one leads to neither good nor bad result. And that is what is meant by beyond birth and death. Okay? So heedful and heedless.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Another question from YouTube. I think this is from John. How have the teachings of this particular sutta helped you?
Oh,
I think, yeah.
Well, in fact, in my 60-over years life, I've been in touch with the Dhamma for, I don't know, maybe like 40 over years. Right? I think it is not only this discourse, but many of the Buddha's teachings have been great blessings in my life. For example, when I look back, when I look at the 38 blessings, obviously I don't have all the blessings, but I'm still trying to to cultivate, to develop it. But I think it helps me in so many ways. Like, for example, vast learning. Okay, when I was a student, I first came in contact with the Dhamma when I was in sixth form. So I told myself that I have to make sure that I'm well educated, I can earn a good living, so that I'm able to support the Dhamma, right? Support the Dhamma for the benefit of all, for benefit of many others. So I make it a point to to make sure that I'm successful in my career, because if I'm successful in my career, then I'm also can give an impression that one can still be successful in one's career and still practice the Dhamma, right? And I look back again and I find that I can do that, and I put into the practice of. Right? So many of the 38 blessings, like for example, practice of the precepts, which is also mentioned in the blessing. So they've been a great help to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's another question. This is a bit lengthy though. What is the right thing to do when someone asks you to keep it as a secret, not to be revealed to another person, which at the same time you felt uneasy, not being able to alert the other person, as it may jeopardize everyone's feeling towards all? A little bit complicated though, but I think it's about, I think related to an earlier one that you answered, I think.
Well, if somebody asks you to keep a secret, well, you just keep a secret then.
Yes,
in the Vacha Sutta, the Buddha says a well-spoken words is is timely, isn't it? Maybe not so much in that sutta. There's another discourse where the Buddha says sometimes if there's nothing good to say, just be silent, just be quiet, isn't it? Yeah,
silence is golden. Yeah,
silence is golden. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, look, I've got a secret to tell you. Please keep it." Then, well, if he's willing to tell you, then you listen and then you just keep it. You don't have to tell anybody, right? If somebody comes and asks you, "Hey, I understand Mr. A told you a secret, right? Can you share with me his secret?" Then, of course, your response would be, "Well, you already knew that Mr. A came to me and tell me that it's a secret. If it's a secret, then of course I'm not supposed to tell. So obviously I can't tell you." Then you can be very frank with that person, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I think there's still at least 2 or 3 questions here.
Okay.
Let me just go back to this question from Facebook. If we drink a glass or 2 of alcohol during social gathering, but we are not drunk, Is it acceptable for Buddhists to drink on such occasions? For we cannot avoid drinking alcohol as to please our bosses.
Well, I don't think it's for me to say whether it's acceptable or not acceptable. But when we look at the 5 precepts, the alcohol by itself, intoxicants by itself, is neither good or bad, isn't it? Yeah. If you look at it. But what is important is what happens when you drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Now, alcohol has, obviously, we all know that, alcohol has got an addictive aspects to it. Right? So that's where the danger is.
Yeah.
So one starts with social drinking, right? And especially if one likes it, so then one start making excuse, oh, it's just social drinking, right? And you have seen so many cases of how do you think those who are alcoholics, you know, or those who have got problems with alcohol, how do you think they all start? Do you think I think they all start probably by having one glass, right? And then it goes on, right? Social drinking, and then when they are faced with problems, when they are faced with depression, so as the saying goes, we drink out our sorrows, isn't it? We drink out our sorrow. So we start using alcohol. Because alcohol tends to numb our mind. Okay. There's a saying that first man takes a bottle, then bottle takes the bottle, and then the bottle takes the man.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so we all start by taking. Man takes the bottle. I mean, well, I just drink a little bit from the bottle. Then the little bit becomes more, and then when it becomes so habitual, even when you're drunk, you don't even know it. So it's really the bottle taking the bottle. It's really the bottle taking the bottle. You say, oh, and finally, when you can't control yourself, it's the bottle who takes the bottle. Okay, so I think there's always the danger to it, and the Buddha must have seen it during his time in India, right? So it's not only the Indians today, right? The Indians during the Buddha's time, all right? They must have this problem of alcoholism.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why the Buddha discouraged it. But if you think that you can control it, well, you can try it. But the wise people have always said that we should avoid. Yeah. If you can, you avoid it. Okay.
Absolutely. That's good advice. Yeah. There are 2 more questions I can see here. Can you explain, this is about euthanasia. What is your Dharma view on euthanasia? Instead of leaving the family members more emotional and financial suffering, can we decide to end a sick person's suffering? Is this directly breaking the first precept on killing? A little bit complicated though, this question.
Yeah. Okay. Again, this is one of those topics that we could spend hours debating on, right? Yeah. But I think first and foremost is that euthanasia or mercy killing, as long as it is euthanasia and if we are directly involved, killing is killing. I think there's no question about it. Yeah, there's no question about it. Then one asks ourselves, why do we carry out mercy killing? Why do we have euthanasia? Say it could be our parent, it could be our children, it could be our relative, and we are asked to decide. So if we make that decision, so indirectly we are saying yes. So that is killing. Okay. Then one explores the motivation behind it. Is it because of one feels very uneasy, you know, or because of how the discomfort it will cause to the family members? So we like to tell ourselves, convince ourselves, okay, it's better that this person goes off. But actually, deep inside is for our own benefit, isn't it? After that, we feel what a relief, that this person, it could be our parents, right? Yeah. Because we, in a way, we see the person suffering for so long. Of course, from the Orthodox Buddhist point of view is, we would like that person to go on its own. All right, we like the person to go on its own. So I think it it depends your personal perspective, yeah? Really on the personal. But from the Buddhist perspective, euthanasia is killing. There's no question about it. It is breaking the first precept. The question whether would you want to do it? If you want to do it, there are repercussions. Okay, and we are prepared for the repercussion. Of course, we do not know what is the repercussion. We don't know what is the karma of that act of ours. We do not know, but we are prepared to bear that consequences. Right? Okay, sometimes in life we have to make that difficult decision.
Okay. I think in the interest of time, there's one more question. This is from Facebook. Compassion without wisdom may be harmful to us. For example, giving our time, energy, and wealth to help others or temple activities to the extent that they affect our health or neglect our family duties. Do you agree wisdom must go hand in hand with compassion when living our life? Or a bit long, this question.
Yeah. I think that was what I was trying to say. Just now, I gave a quote from Joseph Goldstein book called One Dharma, where he said an ideal way of life is to have three aspects or three qualities: compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. So compassion is the expression of our way of life, but it must always be accompanied by wisdom. And how do we do that? The method is mindfulness. When you're mindful, all right, you know that yes, this is compassion, but is this compassion, is this based on wisdom? For example, you see a person drowning. Out of compassion, you jump in, but you can't swim. There's no wisdom. Right? So your compassion, right? So your compassion must be accompanied by wisdom. What do you do to save that person? Compassion is always there. But how do you do it? There's so many different ways of helping that person, right? That is why in Buddhism, we also talk about being skillful. Skillfulness, upaya, all right? So compassion, wisdom, mindfulness. So these three things, I think they are inseparable, all right? So the method is mindfulness, the expression of our way of life is compassion, and it must always be accompanied. I think the late Chief Reverend, late K. Sri Dhammananda, I think in his book, he said we must not have the what is that the blind compassion. Our compassion must not be blind. Our compassion must always be related, be accompanied by innate wisdom, by wisdom that we develop. So Buddhism is always about developing compassion and wisdom through mindfulness.